and she's the prostitute. And who is he? He's the moral arbiter of 20-year-old behavior now, right? So then I said, you know, some facts that I just went on Wiki. And he said, just want you to know, I've forgiven her. And this young woman, I'm like, what is he, the pimp?
And did it sort of start? It started from The View, yes?
The View.
Yeah.
I'm about to show you exactly why Rosie O'Donnell's takedown of the Trump brothers has everyone talking. The way she dissected their desperate attempts to stay relevant is both hilarious and brutally accurate. In the next few minutes, you'll see side-by-side comparisons of Donald Sr. in his prime versus the boy's sad imitation, Rosie's most savage quotes that sent Don Jr. into a Twitter meltdown, and the long history of this feud that's more dramatic than any reality show. The Trump boys thought they could handle Rosie. Big mistake. Huge. Hey, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button. We know you want to. Go ahead, we'll wait. Alright, appreciate it. Now, back to the video. Remember when a Trump tweet could send the stock market into a tailspin? When his rallies packed stadiums with red-hatted superfans hanging on his every word? Those glory days seem like ancient history now, as the once mighty Trump brand limps along without the presidential seal to prop it up. And nobody's enjoying pointing this out more than Rosie O'Donnell. The contrast between Donald Trump Sr.'s White House era and the current state of the Trump empire couldn't be more stark. During his presidency, Trump commanded attention with every caps lock tweet and rambling press conference. News networks, both those who loved him and those who loathed him, covered his every move like it was breaking news. But now, the spotlight has dimmed considerably, leaving his son scrambling to keep the family name in headlines. Don Jr. and Eric have been working overtime trying to fill Daddy's shoes, but according to Rosie, they're wearing flip-flops to a formal dinner. Don Jr.'s speaking style has become particularly painful to watch, a performance Rosie brutally described as sweaty, over-caffeinated ranting. Anyone who's caught his recent appearances knows exactly what she means. His wild hand gestures slash through the air like he's swatting invisible flies, while his eyes bore into the camera with an intensity that Rosie perfectly captured as looking like it just insulted his father.
Donald Trump has been mad at you for a very long time.
Over a decade.
Over a decade.
Yes.
It's been really, we've sort of made the joke on the show that he's flip-flopped on everything except you.
It's actually very true. You know, there was a Tara O'Connor, I believe her name was, a young Irish lass who was Junior Miss Trump Atlantic City pageant sexist winner that were easily accessible since this campaign began. That he is bankrupt 4 times, that he got all his money from his father.
While Don Jr. at least attempts to capture his father's bombastic energy, Eric seems content to fade into the background. Rosie didn't pull punches here either, saying he simply nods himself into irrelevance. She landed an especially devastating comparison when she noted that if Don Jr. is malfunctioning live on air, Eric is just buffering in real time. Ouch. The image of Eric Trump as the human equivalent of that spinning circle on your screen when a video won't load is both hilarious and painfully accurate. The viewership numbers tell the story even better than Rosie's zingers. When Trump Sr. held court from the Oval Office, networks saw rating spikes whenever he spoke. His first major address as president pulled in over 48 million viewers across multiple networks. Compare that to Don Jr.'s recent Fox News appearances, which barely register in the ratings race. Even their social media presence pales in comparison. Don Jr. might have a few million followers, but it's a fraction of what his father commanded before his Twitter ban. What's most telling about the Trump brothers' struggle for relevance is how they keep hammering the same tired talking points their father popularized years ago. They're like a cover band playing the greatest hits, but with none of the original's charisma. Rosie pointed out how Don Jr. constantly yells about the radical left as if trapped in a Fox News fever dream. The brothers keep recycling these phrases: radical left, cancel culture, fake news, hoping they'll generate the same electricity they did when their father first deployed them. But like a joke told too many times, the impact has faded to eye rolls. The Trump sons even try to use Rosie herself as a rallying cry, invoking her name to summon conservative sympathy. It's a direct play from their father's decades-long feud playbook. But when the boys try it, it comes across as desperate rather than commanding. There's something almost sad about watching them try to recapture that Trump Sr. magic by attacking the same targets in the same ways, only to generate a fraction of the reaction. What really seems to have gotten under the brothers' skin is Rosie's fundamental criticism, that they're just pale imitations of their father. Without the presidency as a platform, they're running on fumes, desperately clinging to relevance in a world that's already moved on. That assessment cuts deeper than any specific insult because it exposes the uncomfortable truth. Donald Trump Sr. was a once-in-a-generation media phenomenon, and his sons are just the bargain basement knockoff version. The family that once slapped the Trump name on everything from steaks to universities now struggles to maintain the brand's former luster. It's like watching a luxury label slowly migrate from Fifth Avenue to the clearance bin at TJ Maxx. While their father dominated headlines and dictated news cycles, the brothers are increasingly relegated to friendly outlets and the conservative conference circuit, preaching to an ever-shrinking choir. From Fifth Avenue to TJ Maxx clearance racks isn't the only downgrade the Trumps are dealing with. There's one critic who's been living rent-free in their heads since 2006, and no amount of MAGA rallies or Fox News appearances can evict her. When Rosie O'Donnell speaks, the Trump family doesn't just get angry, they get rattled in a way that reveals something surprisingly fragile beneath all that gold-plated bravado. It all started back in 2006 when Rosie, then co-host of The View, took issue with Trump's handling of a Miss USA controversy. Instead of simply addressing her points, Trump immediately went nuclear, calling her a fat pig, a slob, and a real loser in interviews. But unlike other Trump targets who might retreat or shift to policy debates, Rosie doubled down, famously describing him as a snake oil salesman and mockingly flipping her hair to imitate his distinctive hairstyle. What makes this feud so special isn't just its longevity, it's how uniquely effective Rosie's jabs have proven to be. When most comedians or journalists take shots at the Trumps, they focus on policies, corruption allegations, or political missteps. Rosie, however, aims directly at the jugular, their carefully constructed image of success and importance. She doesn't just question what they do, she questions who they are. Remember when Trump called Rosie disgusting both inside and out in that infamous interview? Or when he tweeted that meeting with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un would be better than spending time with O'Donnell? These weren't calculated political moves. They were emotional outbursts from a man obsessed with his public perception. Most telling was when he brought up their feud unsolicited during a 2015 presidential debate. When Megyn Kelly questioned his treatment of women, Trump immediately deflected. Only Rosie O'Donnell. The audience laughed, but the moment revealed just how deeply she had gotten under his skin. The Trump response playbook usually works like clockwork. Attack the critic, claim victimhood, rally the base against the enemy, and move on. This strategy served them well against political opponents, journalists, and even foreign leaders. But with Rosie, the playbook falls apart. When she calls them out, the Trumps don't respond strategically, they respond emotionally, often making themselves look worse in the process. Take Donald's decade-long obsession with Rosie. Long after most people had forgotten their original spat, he continued bringing her up in interviews, tweets, and even campaign events. That's not the behavior of someone who's simply playing political games. It's the reaction of someone who's been genuinely wounded. The same pattern appears with Jr., whose responses to Rosie's critiques often feature the same defensive tone and personal attacks as his father's. What makes Rosie such kryptonite to the Trump family armor? It's simple. She attacks the core of their identity. The Trump brand isn't just about politics or business. It's about a carefully crafted image of success, strength, and winning. When most critics attack their policies or ethics, the Trumps can deflect by changing the subject or claiming political bias. But when Rosie mocks Don Jr.'s desperate attempts to mimic his father's speaking style or Eric's inability to articulate a coherent point, she's not just criticizing what they do, she's exposing who they really are. This approach is particularly devastating to individuals with narcissistic tendencies. By challenging their carefully curated self-image, Rosie forces them into emotional rather than strategic responses. When she suggests they're just sad imitations of their father, who himself is all bluster and no substance, it triggers a visceral reaction because it threatens the very foundation of how they see themselves. The most revealing aspect of this feud isn't what the Trumps say about Rosie, it's how they say it. The emotional intensity, the inability to let it go, the way they bring her up unprompted. These reactions expose vulnerabilities they work hard to conceal. Their typical attack and play victim strategy that works so well against other critics simply falls flat against O'Donnell because her criticisms strike at something too personal to deflect with political talking points. In a world where the Trumps have faced criticism from presidents, prime ministers, and Hollywood's elite, it's fascinating that a comedian and talk show host continues to be the one critic they can never quite recover from. Their inability to effectively counter her reveals more about their insecurities than any policy debate ever could. Rosie O'Donnell possesses a unique talent for getting under the Trump family's skin, but this latest round of verbal sparring wasn't random. It was triggered by something specific, a particularly cringe-worthy performance from Don Jr. that practically begged for criticism. His rambling, red-faced diet tribe about canceled culture and masculinity became the perfect target for Rosie's razor-sharp wit. The Trump brothers have been desperately trying to fill their father's oversized media footprint with an endless stream of content. Their relentless Twitter rants and podcast pontifications eventually caught Rosie's attention. Like a predator sensing wounded prey, she decided to enter the chat and, as one source put it, shred the brothers with the precision of a New York deli slicer. This wasn't just another celebrity taking pot shots. This was a calculated strike at their desperate attempts to stay relevant. What made Rosie's takedown so effective was her laser focus on their presentation style rather than policy positions. She didn't bother with the usual political arguments. Instead, she zoomed in on Don Jr.'s wild hand gestures and the way he stares at the camera like it just insulted his father. These observations hit harder than any policy critique because they expose something more fundamental: the brothers' performative nature and lack of authenticity. Eric Trump wasn't spared either. Rosie's description of him as the human equivalent of an ellipsis wasn't just mean. It was devastatingly accurate. She highlighted how he fades into the background, trailing off without contributing anything substantial. This criticism went beyond simple mockery. It exposed the fundamental emptiness behind their carefully constructed tough guy routines. Don Jr.'s response proved Rosie's point better than she ever could. Within hours of her comments, he was on Instagram with a rant that, according to sources, sounded like he had just chugged 6 Red Bulls and read half a Breitbart article. His tweet that sad Rosie, still obsessed with our family, followed their standard playbook. Position yourself as the victim while simultaneously attacking your critic. But this time, the strategy backfired spectacularly. By responding so emotionally, Don Jr. demonstrated exactly what Rosie had been pointing out: his inability to control his reactions, his dependence on his father's tactics without his father's skill, and his fundamental insecurity. Each wild-eyed video and caps lock tweet simply validated her criticism and gave it more oxygen. He wasn't defending himself, he was providing free advertising for her takedown. What's particularly interesting about this round of the feud is the public reaction. While the MAGA faithful predictably flooded comment sections with support, there were signs of fatigue even among conservatives. As one source noted, even among conservatives, there's only so many times you can watch Don Jr. shriek about socialism before it starts feeling like an overplayed Vine compilation from 2014. The brothers' act is wearing thin, and Rosie's criticism tapped into a growing consensus that they're becoming caricatures of themselves. This latest clash revealed something deeper about the post-Trump presidency landscape. The brothers are stuck in an impossible position. They desperately need to maintain the Trump brand's relevance, but they lack the unique qualities that made their father a media phenomenon. They're trying to play a character created by someone else, and it's not working. Rosie's genius was in recognizing and highlighting this fundamental contradiction. What truly triggered this round wasn't just the brothers' social media presence, but their increasingly desperate attempts to maintain relevance in a landscape that's moving on without them. While their father commanded attention through sheer force of personality, whether you loved or hated him, the brothers are struggling to generate the same level of interest. Rosie zeroed in on this insecurity with surgical precision. The aftermath of this exchange left the Trump brothers in a no-win situation. Ignoring Rosie might have seemed like the smart move, but their brand depends on never backing down from a fight. Responding proved her point about their thin skin and lack of restraint. It's a dance they've been locked in for decades, but one that's increasingly highlighting their limitations rather than their strengths. So what's the real story behind Rosie's takedown of the Trump brothers? It's not just personal. She's exposing the cheap theatrics and faux bravado of two guys desperately clinging to relevance. Rosie's commentary strips away their superficial personas to reveal something many Americans already suspected: these apples fell pretty far from the Trump tree, then rolled down a hill into a discount bin. In the end, the brothers' recycled rhetoric and performative outrage just isn't landing like Daddy's did. Even their critics seem bored. The The Trump sons keep trying to recreate the magic, but as Rosie made crystal clear, you can't sell knockoffs when everyone's seen the original.